Hello and welcome back. I'm Grant Fisher. Today I'm focusing on Horn Concerto Number 2 in E-flat major by Richard Strauss. This concerto was completed in 1942, premiered in 1943 by this man right here, Gottfried von Freiberg. I might have pronounced that wrong, and I apologize if I did. And the Vienna Philharmonic. So Strauss, being a major composer of his time, well known for his operas, among other things, operas and tone poems mostly. Getting this premiered by the Vienna Philharmonic, no small feat. The piece was dedicated to Strauss's father. His first horn concerto, written over 60 years previously when he was 18, was written for his father to perform. He's now near the end of his life, late 70s, and it's been 6 decades since his first horn concerto, and he is dedicating it to his father, who was a professional horn player. Some of the musical aspects. It's kind of conservative in its structure in that it really follows exactly what we would expect of a concerto. We have 3 movements and they go fast, slow, fast, with the movements listed out there for you to look at. A lot of people say that Horn Concerto Number 2 really looks back at his younger years as far as its setup and a lot of its style goes, and especially to Horn Concerto Number 1. He knows he's kind of getting towards the end of his life and he's reminiscing on some earlier things. I like this quote here. Still, there are Straussian melodic shapes, harmonic successions, and rhythmic characteristics that reveal the identity of their creator. The composer looks back to a past aesthetic from the perspective of someone who has lived through the paradigm changes of the 19th and 20th centuries. In that respect, one might call the work postmodern. So Strauss has lived through now both World War I and World War II, and so there's been a lot of changes in the world of music, and in Strauss's life particularly. And so we see that in the harmony and the rhythmic characteristics of the piece, that the rhythms are more kind of abstract, as well as the harmony not sticking necessarily right to major or minor tonality, but it still has the traditional outline. So we'll take a look at a couple different spots. We'll take a look right at the beginning where we see that Strauss is not particularly kind to the horn player. He gives a lot of really technically difficult passages, as well as problems with range, where he goes to the extremes of the range kind of at will. Let's start at the beginning, please. There we go. Those giant leaps, particularly difficult for horns, where the partials are very close together for the instrument. And here we go with fast technical. I'm going to pause it just for a moment because we get to this part where the orchestra comes back in. We've kind of had a flip-flop of the traditional idea, where normally we would have the orchestra introduce the idea, and then the soloists come back in and repeat it and play it with their own kind of versions. The soloist has introduced the idea, and now we're going to get it in the background in the accompanying orchestra. You hear the violins bum ba dum da dum ba dum da dum, like we heard from the soloist just a little bit ago. In the second movement, it slows down, like I said, and we get the more traditional intro from the orchestra, and then the soloist coming in and providing their spin on it. So the orchestra has introduced this idea of the main theme of the second movement, and now we are hearing the horn come in. An interesting aspect between the first and second movements, there is no pause, which is not particularly traditional. And you can hear how Strauss, he was known for really wanting to use the horn in all of its aspects. And he does this in a lot of its music, not only as concerti for the instrument, but also his operas and his tone poems. So we've heard the big brassy entrance in Movement 1, and now a really beautiful, slow, melodic version in Movement 2. And finally we'll have in Movement 3, the rondo, we have something that's very traditional of horn concerti, which is this kind of idea of the horn as an instrument of the hunt, where it was traditionally used, and we hear the horn call. You can imagine that out in the woods calling to the other hunters as you're searching down your game. A very traditional way of looking at the horn as a practical instrument. But then we put a spin on it with these versions that would not have been playable with those instruments. So that's a look at Horn Concerto number 2 in E flat major by Richard Strauss. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you saw some of the ways that the concerto was traditional and some of the ways that it looks to the future and kind of changes things up and takes its own path.